After 3 years of development, I have finally uploaded my game to Steam. Not to fully release it or put it into early access, but to actually try Steam's new private playtesting features. Now, before you click away thinking I baited you into watching a 20-minute video about my unreleased indie game, that if you look at my devlogs, you might think that it is in development hell, that is actually not the case. In actual fact, I've been chiseling away at my trailer to-do list with all the feedback I got from the playtest. The funny thing is, what people actually wanted me to fix. You know, giving Valve $100 was probably the easiest part of this whole process. Because playtesting is in a beta stage within the back end of Steamworks, a lot of the steps and documentation to get a playtest up and working and how to actually get the build going and then keys for playtesters to send out to them, which by the way are two completely different things you need to apply for and submit to Valve for them to approve. The information we have is either outdated or vague and mysterious. One of the reasons I actually wanted to make this video was to help those who haven't done it yet on how to do it. And then that way, you won't freak out when Steam rejects your application and you start thinking, oh crap, they've figured me out, I'm a fraud, I can't actually make games, maybe my parents were right. No, silly, you just used the wrong image for your Steam library icon. Let's fix that real quick. So if you haven't already in your Steamworks account, you need to create and pay the Steam Direct fee. This will create a new app on your account, which would then be used to eventually publish your game. Once you paid the fee and have created your app, you then want to set up the Steam playtest. And you want to ignore mostly everything on this page. For now, we're just focusing on the private playtests, which you can do by going to all associated packages, DLC demos, and tools. And as you can see here, I have the Steam playtest. You want to click on whatever is here to make a new playtest, which you'll then see in the homepage as a separate application. What you want to do is you want to go to the playtest version of your game. And of course here, it looks very different from how it probably looks for you because it's a released playtest. And it can seem a little confusing because it looks like your regular app, but it's the actual playtest app. Be sure to not get confused and accidentally release your full game instead of the playtest. Now, the store presence for the playtest, especially if you're not doing anything public like how I am, mine's all private, this will all be focused on the game library in Steam. So in Steam, in my game library, if I type in Coco Loco playtest, you'll see here, you have to place in a banner and a title card along with an icon. Those are the three main things you'll need when referencing your store presence. Now, of course, in the future, if you plan to publicly release this, there'll be more details you need to then submit, but then that'll be more associated with your full game. My suggestion, especially when you're thinking about whether or not you want to do a public playtest and how you want the presence and reviews for your store to go about, it's actually best to go and talk to someone who has experience and you can kind of share your individual circumstances because there's not one size fits all for this. The good thing with having a separate tool is that things like reviews and comments are all separate to the fully released game. So if I release this playtest publicly and it gets really bad reviews, it then won't affect my fully released game when I eventually release it. Do what you will with that information. It could be a positive thing, especially if your playtest gets really good reviews to then help launch your fully released game. But it can also act as a safety mechanism for, okay, this was really poorly received, I'll do better for the full launch of the game. So you can see here in the store page admin for the playtest, I have a banner here, which will then show up in the Steam homepage like this. The next is uploading a game build. This is probably the most complicated process. Steam has tutorials for this. Just be mindful, it's not as easy as uploading a YouTube video or posting a picture to social media. The reason why Steam is so good for players is because they do a lot of things in the back end. And part of you as a developer now is working with that back end to upload your game build to Steam. So there'll be a process of uploading an actual build and then having that as the current build of the game. They'll have a checklist of things you need to do. And then once you submit that, which these two things, both the store presence and the game build, are two separate things you need to submit and will either be denied or approved at the good folks over at Valve on the Steam team. Once these two things have been approved, you can then release your game, which will then allow you to play it. If you're doing this on your own Steam account, you should have access automatically and it'll just appear in your library like so. Once you have your Steam playtest application, you now need to apply for Steam keys to give people access to that playtest. And one more thing I forgot to mention as well is when requesting for your Steam playtest keys, to only request standard release Steam keys, none of the other stuff. Keep in mind, however, if you want to expand your pool of playtesters in the future and allow more access to more people as playtesting continues, rather than asking Steam for, 10 keys, 20 keys, 5 keys, ask for a reasonable collective amount for your playtesting period. That way, at the start, you can request the amount of keys that you will need. Also, you might have an experience like myself, where somehow, friend, you know who you are, redeemed the private playtest on the wrong Steam account. But you know who isn't dumb enough to redeem a private playtest key onto a Steam account that isn't even theirs? The folks over at Brilliant, who are sponsoring today's video. So just like how social media can keep us informed, or search engines can help answer our questions on the day-to-day, Brilliant is a platform that can become part of your daily routine. Brilliant helps you gain more critical thinking skills by teaching you how to problem solve. So when you're building your knowledge with Brilliant, you're also becoming a better thinker.
And with Brilliant being on mobile, you can basically take it anywhere.
In the cinema, at a wedding.
You can even use Brilliant at the beach. And if you're someone like me who's returning back to university and is terrified of not knowing the math that my units will cover, I'm actually using Brilliant to revise and go over things I've learned in the past, or maybe certain aspects of math I didn't already know, like visual algebra, solving equations, and calculus. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/Nathan Rona or scan the QR code on screen. You can also click the link in the description. You also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thank you, Brilliant, so much for sponsoring this video and supporting solo devs like myself with our content. Now, on to the rest of the video. So for feedback, I just simply created a Google form. I allowed them to upload screenshots and videos, as well as have a comment section and a few of their details. And then over in Unreal, I just created a button that would then link to the URL of the form for them to then go and submit their requests and feedback. Looking back though, I actually wished I had asked more people when they were first playing the game to jump on calls with me so I could watch their first impressions and reactions. This is something I'm definitely doing in the next stage of development, because I think there is definitely a difference between reading someone's edited words on a screen through text and actually watch them experience the game for the first time. I also think it would have helped me immensely get the feedback I was actually looking for. I know my game isn't ready, it's missing features and there are bugs that need fixing, but that wasn't the reason for this initial playtest. What I really wanted answered was, is this game fun? Can people see the vision of what I want to create? Where the actual feedback I got was, why are there no settings? The game's audio! It's too loud! Why can me no full screen game? Why aren't the settings options working?
Excuse me, the game repeats after the first level.
Hey, I found this bug.
I need audio controls. I can't hear anything. Hey, I found this bug. You know that bug everyone's been talking about? Well, I found this bug. I appreciate the genuine criticism that I got, but I didn't realize how much people needed from the very start in terms of settings for the game and stuff like video and audio control. I also had some pretty glaring oversights, like not including a tutorial or showing what the controls even were. Just simply adding a screen that would have showed the controls and the objective of each level would have resolved all of this. Thankfully, people figured it out. But then again, I regret not being there to watch to see if they could figure it out in the process they had as players on not knowing what to do. And looking back at all this, I think the one way I could have improved this experience for myself and the playtesters was actually doing more of this stuff in person. Because a lot of the distractions with the feedback of the forums were all having to do with the playtesters' machines. Whether it was an ultra-wide screen or a 4x3, whether they were wearing headphones or using speakers. I do eventually have to go through all these things and fix them before I release the game. But because my first goal was to gauge people's enjoyment of the prototype, having a build of the game on my own machine and getting people to come over and play it, or heck, even renting out a space to do sort of like a public playtest, would have allowed me more control in making sure that things like the picture and the sound were working, and people could focus more on the experience I was trying to prove, rather than getting them to bug test and call out features that clearly weren't there. And so I took all this feedback and did a few hotfixes. A lot of it was logic and game-breaking stuff, which I did want to nip in the bud ASAP before moving on to bigger and potentially more game-breaking features. Plus, having the manpower of people being able to play my game repeatedly over and over and troubleshoot why drinks weren't spawning or why NPCs were getting stuck in places actually saved me hours of my own time because they sent through step-by-step instructions on how to replicate it. Which, hey, having free labor to fix my game, I understand now why companies have free betas now. Eventually, things began to slow down as I started to work on things like the character models and the game settings, which are the two biggest things people were asking for me to work on. I learned a lot on the Steam playtest, especially more on the technical side of things and how complex and mysterious things can be when you first start out. I think it was a great learning experience for me, and I fundamentally believe if you have the ability to do it, giving Steam a go with playtesting, aside from the fee you got to pay for the one game when you eventually release it to Steam, everything else is free. So giving people who play games on PC, and majority of us are using Steam, is a great way to get your friends and your fan base community to actually playtest your game. And I plan to do more updates on Steam and get people's feedback again on what I've been working on. The reason why it feels like it's taken Coco Loco so long to get to the next stage was I was actually revisiting and rethinking of its purpose and mission and the scope of it. There was a period over Christmas where I was experimenting with a different art style, thinking something a little bit more low poly and even more stylized and pixelated would actually speed up my pipeline in terms of developing assets, because that's something that I thought is taking a large chunk of time, but I actually found that I was working equal amounts on both versions. Because the thing with games and art is that it's all about silhouette, it's all about color, it's all about shape. It doesn't matter if you're doing high poly or low poly, those principles scale up with the scales of your polygons. And so having something low poly actually meant at times I was sacrificing details and then trying to figure out with my art style, how much detail do I add or exclude? So that was a whole month or two I was just spent on figuring out what I wanted the art to be like. And that's still being developed on. In many ways, it's still in a pre-production phase of me figuring out how can I make this game look the way I want it to look. And then aside from that, it's actually getting all the settings working in Unreal. Now, it's come to the point where I ended up buying an asset, which has also been more work than I initially thought it would be. And for most things, it's pretty easy to get settings working. Individually, right, it's not that hard to get everything set up, except for maybe input systems if you're working with different controllers and you want icons for everything, and remapping that stuff can be complicated for those who are doing it for the first time. But other stuff like the quality of the video, the screen size, and mixing things like music and sound effects aren't very complicated to do by themselves, and having all that data saved in a file that then the game can reference as it opens and closes, all that stuff in principle is not hard to do. It does get complex, however, when you have a lot of different systems at once and you're trying to do a lot very quickly. So I've been trying to make my time to make sure the character model looks good, that the rig works well, that each section of the settings work as I want them to work, that things are saving and loading as they should. And in the next few weeks, I hope to have basically everything down pat in that regard. I hope to have a good base model that we can use for all the characters, starting off with the player. And I hope that now, whenever playtesters play the game, they can change the audio, change any sort of video or graphic settings, as well as remapping keys and buttons for the controls. Once that is sorted, I will of course add a screen for people who are new to playing the game, giving them instructions on how to actually play it, and giving a layout of the different controls and buttons. From there, we will expand the game, so it's not just one level. Right now, it's just day one with the same goal, and it repeats on top of itself. The next milestone is having several levels with varying difficulties and goals that you need to achieve, and then being able to place rewards of new items for players to feel like they're working towards something. Once people are having fun with the game and fun unlocking the items and cosmetics, and once I have basically a vertical slice of the full gameplay that I want, then I plan on adding a story to that vertical slice. I'm making this game by myself, independently, while also doing YouTube videos and now going on to study a bachelor's in computer science. My time and energy is going to be spread very thin, but the one thing I've been consistent on with the past 3 to 4 years now is working on Coco Loco. You guys who watch my videos and my friends and family are all people who are always asking me, how's Coco Loco doing? And so that pressure to get it done is definitely there. And so I will always prioritize in the spare moments I have to work on Coco Loco. But the major goal is this, to have a vertical slice that I can have as a public Steam demo. The hard part is getting there. But I think I can do it. Because if I didn't think I could do it, I wouldn't even try. Thank you everyone for watching this video. Thank you for Brilliant for sponsoring the past 3 videos. It's been an amazing time for me as a small creator to make videos that I feel like are definitely high quality. And it's thanks to businesses like Brilliant that actually give me the opportunity to do things like this. So I know you don't all like watching sponsored videos, but it is genuinely something that makes creators like me be able to breathe and push ourselves to make the things that we want to make. If you enjoyed this video, then please do hit subscribe so you can stay informed on the videos I post and the games that I'm making. And as well, if you want to watch more of my content, there is stuff right here that you can enjoy. Until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.